What's going on, gamers? What's going on, everyone? So, you guys know I've covered things in the past about Black Myth Wukong, showing what Turk has done, proving that the Series S memory is okay and it can run fine. And that game science basically lacks console experience. They've even admitted it themselves. And then you had the clowns on the internet, definitely like Nib, trying to say that the Series S is the problem, along with other people saying the Series S is the problem, when really no, the issue was that they lacked console experience. And then we had, something that we still can't 100% clarify, but I think this is not necessarily the problem at the moment. Also, people were confused by Microsoft saying that we don't want to comment on deals made by our partners. I don't think it was a mistake that was said, and that's a very interesting saying. So that made people think that Sony had a shady deal going on with game science to lock it away and then say something like that. But no, we've already proven, regardless of whether that deal was in place or not, that's not the problem here. The problem here is the Series S okay to run Black Myth Wukong on? And the answer is yes, because game science is practically just only talented in the PC market, and they're not so talented on the console market. We've seen that with the PS5 port. So in this video, he's going to prove them wrong. He's going to give you so many different angles, and he's going to shut down Nib. Something else I want to highlight is Code Eastwood came in to defend him too, making it very quite clear right here. As we see, great video. The Turk proves that Xbox Series S on Black Myth Wukong has two issues: GPU, not RAM pool, and a lack of optimization. Which we both know this, because like I said, the PS5 port was not good. So it said a lot about how game science was new and was struggling with the consoles. So here we have it. Like, comment, subscribe. Let's get ready for this. This is going to be interesting.
Wait, what? Holy cow, I can't believe that worked. Throughout 2024, there have been many rumors as to why Black Myth Wukong hasn't made its way over to the series consoles just yet. Some have claimed that Sony money-hatted some under-the-table deal to keep it off of the platform. Yeah. Others have blamed the Series S for its memory limitations.
Yeah, Digital Foundry also said too that it was a skill issue. And guys, it's not making fun of them, it's just realizing that they just need more experience, and that I've proven plenty of times how many other games were running on the Series S. Hellblade 2, Indiana Jones. Do I need to keep going? Isn't that good enough? Cyberpunk 2077. I mean, think about all these other games that have came out that are very demanding games, right? Where you're like, what? That was run on the Series S? And future games that are they're on the way. And that's way more demanding than Black Myth Wukong. You know what I mean? And it's running fine. Star Wars Outlaws? I mean, come on. And that wasn't even fully optimized and that was running. So, yeah. Get out of here with that. This is just to shut down that. And you got some people saying that I'm attacking the PlayStation base. It's like, no, they were the ones attacking the Turks thread, and I came in to basically support and show that they're all being ignorant and they don't know what they're talking about. And it's not the Series S because they just want to hate on the Xbox and bash it. Then you got some idiots coming on my channel trying to say that it's me just hating on the PlayStation fan base. And I'm like, so after everything that's been put in front of you, that's what you want to say? No, that just shows how lost you are. Period.
Everyone loves to clown on the lowly potato, right? Even Paul Tassi, a reporter with Forbes covering video gaming news, has reported the following statement from Microsoft. However, during an interview this past week, the director for Black Myth Wukong said this little nugget, suggesting that the Series S's memory pool was to blame. Of course, many online have taken this quote and run with it, stirring up the typical console war discourse, but that's not why I'm here today. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. I hope you enjoy what's coming. I talk about all things tech, especially the ones that drive my passion, gaming. Regarding the current discourse, I'm not interested in PlayStation or Xbox. I'm interested in validating the developers' claims.
Exactly.
And of course, proving fanboys wrong is always a feather in my cap. So for this video, I wanted to prove there is no memory limitation with Black Myth Wukong and debunk the optimization nonsense being talked about. Now, we've got some strict guidelines, so let's get to it. Now, the Series S console is no stranger to the channel, but for our discussion today, we're really only focusing on the memory subsystem. According to some articles online, the console has a 2 + 8 GB memory configuration. There's 2 GB of slower memory dedicated to the operating system and 8 GB of faster memory dedicated to the video game. From there, it's kind of nebulous how much of this pool is accessible to the game directly, and if there's any other sectioning off of memory for specific uses. So for this video, we have to stick within the Series S's memory constraints while getting the game hopefully to just run. I've got the perfect machine in mind for this. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Turkbox Series S. This build debuted here on the channel in my Hardware Dev Makes a Better Xbox Series S video. The goal was to take the limitations of the Series S and make a more palatable solution. Ultimately, it has ended up with a Ryzen 5 3600, 16GB of DDR4 3600 RAM, a 512GB NVMe drive, and an RTX A2000 GPU. Now, to be fully transparent, this rig is faster than the Series S graphically, but the entire point of this video is not how good it runs, but does it run Black Myth Wukong at all? With this platform, we can monitor both the system memory and video memory usage throughout the game and see if the combined memory usage for the system is below the 8GB dedicated to the game. First, let's run the standalone benchmark just to see if we're in the right ballpark. After turning all the dials to low, that's all the graphical settings, even the resolution, but I do want to keep frame generation on. And sure enough, it runs. Throughout the entire benchmark, we're running anywhere between 4.7GB for system RAM and 2.8GB of VRAM. In total, that's roughly 7.5GB of RAM.
And that's total RAM, meaning the VRAM and the RAM. They were talking about just the RAM in general, you know what I mean? So we see that that's not necessarily the case here. Oh, but it gets more interesting. Let's keep going. Remember, we're here to prove test results and put science right here and give people the facts. Their argument is done. This just shows you how ignorant people are and how they just don't understand how PC gaming works and just how specs work in general, apparently.
At a 25% resolution scale, or 360p, I'm surprised just how fast this little system can run, averaging around 119 FPS over the benchmark. Bumping up FSR to quality mode, or 67%, we're still hitting 3GB of VRAM and 4.5GB of system RAM. This makes sense. Increasing the resolution will consume more VRAM. Regardless, we're still sitting at 7.6 gigs of total system memory. If we want to go up to a 100% resolution scale, or native res, we hit the 8GB system threshold, running at an average of 48 FPS. So overall, we're right on that playable boundary. So I'd take that as a win. However, over on Twitter, it's claimed that running the benchmark doesn't really apply to the game.
You see that right here, right? They're trying to downplay that, but watch what he does after this. Saying that it's more linear in the entire game. The desert and snow areas are more considerably larger and more open. Why I haven't tested it personally? Oh, of course not. You know what I mean? And you need to put together a rig too, like Turk did, because he's actually a hardware developer and he used to work for PlayStation and Xbox. Isn't that funny, huh?
Now, I really don't like this type of game. I didn't really enjoy Elden Ring, but in the name of science, Let's go ahead and buy the game. Psst, don't tell my wife. Okay, let's plop in similar settings. 50% resolution scale, no frame gen for now, low settings across the board, just like a proper Series S game. Wait, what's going on here? Our VRAM looks good, running around 3721 megabytes, similar to our benchmark, but holy cow, that's system RAM. Right now, we're already consuming 7.7 gigabytes of RAM just for the application. However, if we look over at the Windows Task Manager, we see 6.5 gigabytes of our RAM. That's way too high. What can be going on here? Now, hear me out for a second. What happens if we go from 16 gigabytes down to 8 gigabytes? I've got two 4 gigabyte sticks and they can run the same transfer rates and timings, so it should be a drop-in experiment. Now
let's keep in mind, let's go ahead and give Turk credit here for him doing all the work and actually knowing what he's talking about, putting together a custom PC, which he didn't have to do, and buying the game that he's not really into to give us honest results.
Now that is more like it. When there's less memory available to the system, the OS has to manage the resources better. As such, Wukong now only uses a comfortable 2 gigabytes of RAM. Our VRAM remains unchanged, so we're sitting at 5.4 gigabytes of total system RAM. This lines up perfectly with the observations that I've posted on Twitter. Even if we want to be generous on this clip, that's roughly 2.6 gigabytes of system and 3.8 video memory, or 6.4 gigabytes.
So what do we have to say about that? It's not the Series S. I dare you to say that it's the Series S at this point and just show how mentally retarded you are. Because that's exactly what that would be. Now we're just arguing with raw facts here. That's what this is about, just showing you honest results. But we know in Ponyland, it's not about honest results.
Now, speaking of Twitter, it doesn't stop here, folks. Now, I know some of you guys aren't really into all the Twitter drama, so jump to the timecode down below to get yourself the TLDR.
That's all
However,
right.
I've got a lot of clips coming up that prove the point even more. So let's get to the posts. I've been posting these clips on Twitter over the weekend and have gotten some rather interesting posts from several users. The most prominent is from a user, Nib95. If you've watched any of my latest content, he's another fellow PlayStation fan who thinks the PS5 Pro is equivalent to an RTX 4070. And well, we all know how that ended up. He claimed that
there's tests online that show even at 720p lowest settings, it can still hit 13 GB+, which is well above the Series SS usable pool.
From that point, guys, I caught him hook, line, and sinker. Buckle up, folks. It's going to be a wild ride. From there, many of his fans have echoed his sentiment, claiming the desert and the snow areas are considerably larger and more open. Or,
by the way, this is what I mean. These are just like the retards. And guys, I have to say it because at this point, they just want to come in and ride his meat and just like what he says. And then they all come in and like each other's posts. But all this is a bunch of idiots liking their own delusion and supporting delusion instead of wanting to actually know how things work. They'll come in and do all this type of nonsense. And they don't test anything. They don't understand benchmarks. They don't understand how systems actually work. All they do is come in and do this. And these are people that sit online all day doing this and don't play video games. And there's too many of these people in the gaming community. Or act like they are, right? And act like they're tech experts and stuff, but they're all a bunch of just phony idiots. And I'm gonna call it out and say it because it's exactly what it is. And they attack somebody like this who actually knows what they're doing, who has the courtesy and integrity and also the niceness to put together something, spend his own money and give us honest results and tell us and show us whether the dev is lying or not. And it's not necessarily that they were even lying about that. They admitted that they struggle with console optimal experience. Well, people want to find out about the lies as if Sony had to deal with them or not. And whether it was the Series S's fault or not. That would be that. You see what I mean?
Or you get more moves later that can allow you to clone yourself to have 7 of you fighting. And even our friend Xvault chimed in with this gem.
Glad you continue to hold this grifter accountable. I had to block him myself out of his sheer stupidity and also spinning his narrative in false avenues he takes.
How is Turk grifting? That's what they're doing. And arguing against facts. See how phony they are? Unless he's really this stupid, which a lot of people are, I would not be surprised.
Like I said, we are right on target. Next, Nip thinks that I'm
inept enough to assume a flyover benchmark is indicative of the maximum amount of RAM you might use throughout the entire game, proving you yourself don't have a clue how this works. Not to mention, like a fanboy zealot, you're suggesting the game's director is lying or that you know more than he does. You continually embarrass yourself.
So we need the game director to see and run benchmarks to see how things work? He just proves that he's easily brainwashed by somebody that calls themselves a game director and they can't lie. Like the video game industry doesn't have liars in it. Sit down, grown man or talking child.
At this point, it's time to take some body shots. No,
That's
Kevin
right.
Futura, I'm not farming for engagement here. I'm proving the lower end hardware can run the game. I went ahead and posted a clip running and fighting in the first area with 2.3 gigabytes of system RAM and 4 gigabytes of VRAM.
Guys, can we do math here? Does this equal 13? 3.7 plus 2.5? That's too hard for my brain to figure out. Because we know 3 plus 3 equals 6, right? Are we even getting to that?
According to Nib, this is impossible. And the response, mwah, perfection.
Surely, you must understand that memory usage can differ greatly depending on the scene,
Oh
gameplay,
my God.
assets, environment, etc. Even when you're facing multiple enemies or major bosses in a highly taxing scene, and so on.
Now, I gave Nib the chance to explain the 10 gigabyte delta between his test case and mine, but he wouldn't bite. Instead, he just continues to pivot. Now, more body shots. In the next clip, I decided to make the game a bit more enjoyable for myself, so I increased the textures and shadows up to medium.
Round them up, boys. Round them up. Round up the enemies now.
I turned on frame gen, and I set FSR to performance mode. In the clip, I'm only using about 2 gigabytes of system RAM and 4.5 gigabytes of VRAM. The VRAM increase was as expected, and we still maintained a 1.5 gigabyte buffer of the 8 gigabyte system allocation. I even went the extra mile to add 10 enemies into the mix. As Nib himself said, memory usage can differ greatly depending on the scene, gameplay, assets, environment, etc., right? His response just shows he doesn't know what the heck he's talking about. So let's learn from his ignorance. Now, we'll look past his inability to do basic math on adding the relevant memory fields here, but let's highlight some of those personal attacks some more.
And guys, who's going to play Black Myth Wukong like that, right? He gathered up all those enemies on this potato rig, right? Supposedly, because that's what people are going to call it. And it didn't crash. It didn't slow down or break down, right? Why are we still arguing at this point? Why? And here he comes again. Instead of just admitting that he was wrong. Were you not surprised?
Anyone with even a modicum of common sense and intellect would know that there could be far more RAM-intensive scenes in such a comprehensive game with far larger environments and scaling enemies, bosses, abilities, etc.
In short, Nib's stance is, nuh-uh, this isn't the exact area. So let's go for the knockout. Let's go to the exact scene, the same area that he presented first, the white-clad noble fight. Thanks to my friend Bing over on X, he was able to guide me exactly where I needed to go. I'm still using about 7.
We see how honest Turk is, right? With his results too, saying he guided me. I didn't even make it here by myself. Like he's even in it. You just tell he's honest. You know what I mean? What is he hiding? You know what I mean? The people that are phony are over there. People that are dumb are over there. He knows what he's talking about. I follow him on Twitter. He follows me on Twitter. I'm subbed to him on YouTube. He's subbed to me on YouTube. We talk. You know what I mean? The guy's an honest guy. I will tell you if he isn't, and I'm telling you, he knows what he's talking about. We can also go to his Twitter. Let's go ahead and go to right here. Follows you. I follow him. Former Xbox and PlayStation hardware dev, now making AI GPUs, PC gamer, tech evangelist, calling out fanboys, all tweets and opinions are my own. Like, information technology company over here in Austin, Texas. I live in Texas as well, too. Like, the work is there. You could see it. He knows what he's doing.
7 gigabytes of total system memory here. And some observations are starting to boil up that I could see, and we'll get around to that shortly. And this is where Nib finally shows his hand. He just doesn't understand how the memory works. Up to this point, we've been talking about in-use memory for both the system RAM and GPU RAM. Within the OS, applications are allowed to request and can be allocated more space that just doesn't exist. This is thanks to the concept of virtual memory. Yeah. Modern operating systems will track what an application is requesting, what it has allocated to the application, and where that memory exists. When we run out of
Yeah, he taught me some things that I just wasn't aware of. You know what I mean? I'm not going to say I know more than him in the hardware department, that it's been his job for a long time and that he's been doing for a while. It's just like, it's better to do that so you can actually learn instead of being a retard blocking off learning and thinking that you know because you don't want to admit that you're wrong. That's a child.
Physical RAM chips, the system makes virtual RAM available through the swap file. Now, I don't want to get into the technical nuts and bolts with you guys, but this is the exact scenario we have going on. The game is requesting even more RAM than it needs. The operating system isn't giving it all, and it only has access to about 7 gigabytes of RAM. This is the precise reason we saw absurd memory values before we swapped our memory sticks from the original 16 gigabyte setup. This space isn't really needed, and it doesn't have to be used. This memory technique is a common practice, and especially in this instance, it isn't relevant. As we clearly see in the clips, we are barely even hitting the swap file on the NVMe drive. The same applies to the GPU. The A2000 requests roughly 5 gigabytes of space, but the game is only using about 4 gigabytes. And more importantly, the game's performance isn't impacted. It's just humming right along. At this point, I've committed and we're going to be testing more areas, but Nib triples down with the classic backpedaling.
This scene is also far from the most demanding in the game.
He also mentions a move in the game called Pluck of Many. We'll get back to that one. I then moved on to Chapter 2, the desert area that people have been claiming is super heavy because it's an open world. Well, guys, it's not. It still only uses about 7 gigabytes for both the system and the video memory. Nib then tries to counter, but has a huge whiff, again showing his lack of understanding of how memory systems work. I asked him to explain the 23 gigabytes of allocated memory system-wide, considering this system only has 8 gigabytes, but there was no response. And time for the final blow, the closing fight in Chapter 2, the Yellow Wind Sage. This fight has all of the bells and whistles. We've got particle effects, alpha effects, sand deformation, and that dreaded Pluck of Many move that makes all these different copies of your character. Now, I'll post the tweet showing my results, but the last bullet is the most damning for Nib. At the near end of the battle, the game's memory usage dropped from 2400 megabytes to 1700 megabytes, with zero impact on performance in the fight. I only noticed it as I was rewatching the clip.
Game over. Sit down. Grown men are talking. Sit down.
That same drop happens with all the tornadoes, the multiple copies of my character, and all the other effects turned on. The game and the operating system just said, Wukong doesn't really need this much RAM, guys. Let's release it. And the game just said, okay, boss. At this point, Nib is out of ideas, and he defers to the devs to answer all of my questions. Rather than admit he's wrong, he continues pivoting and moving on to other threads, calling me disingenuous and other nonsense. Breaking news. While finishing this script, I thought I could try and see if Black Myth Wukong could even run with only 4 gigabytes of RAM while running Windows. Remember, 4 gigabytes is the minimum spec for Windows, so we are definitely pushing the limit. Not only that, but 16 gigabytes is the minimum spec for the game on PC, so this is the worst case setup that the game could come across. And wouldn't you know, holy cow guys, this runs. Yes, it's not good, but with Windows hogging over 2.5 gigabytes of RAM, Wukong is struggling to keep up with the requirements. This makes complete sense. Throughout all the clips we've seen today, we've seen the game comfortably run with as little memory as 1.7 gigabytes to it. So all the skips, the page file lurches, etc., this all makes sense. Unfortunately for Nib's followers, they totally took the bait and they just don't get it. But that's a debate for another day. So, what have we learned so far? First, with our limited memory setup, we can make it all the way into Chapter 3 of Wukong, encountering 0 memory issues. Sure, we do have to dial settings down to work within our GPU's capability, but that's a GPU thing, not memory. Second, we've tested various talking points spewed out by fanboys online. We've debunked Nib's 13 gigabyte scenario with the white-clad noble. We've debunked the desert chapter's open world, as well as the snow, which isn't extremely heavy on the RAM. More importantly, we caught the game and operating system red-handed, removing RAM from the game while in the middle of an intense boss fight, with all the graphical effects and the copy spell as directed by the users, with no impact on the game performance. I'm going to keep playing the game to see if I can hit any other instances, but this video ultimately poses a serious question. Now, I don't care about the exclusivity deals or console war stuff, but what the developers have said. Why are the developers standing behind the optimization excuse? All of the options that I've looked at today are available on PC to get the game to work. I don't even have to go to any funny business with additional mods, page file manipulation, or any of that other PC Master Race stuff. It just works, guys. The devs made specific design choices with the base game, and they went ahead and delivered a PS5 Pro patched with enhanced options. Clearly, they know how to adjust the settings, so why can't they just turn them down? We all know the Series S is a potato. It doesn't have much GPU power, but it wasn't designed to deliver a flagship experience. That's why they made the Series X. Regardless, plenty of top-tier first and third-party games run well enough on the Series S. And at the end of the day, I've accomplished what I wanted to do, and I hope you've learned more about the nuances of memory management and how it can work with lower-end hardware. If you liked what you saw, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. It will definitely help me out. Now that we're into 2025, there are plenty of other console war talking points to debunk, and I've got a PC build that I think you guys won't want to miss. So thank you guys for sticking to the end of the video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.
Like, comment, subscribe, let me know what y'all think. Also to Turk as well. You see, he's an awesome guy. He doesn't post videos a lot, but when he does, it means something. So there we have it, y'all. We have our answers here. Like, what is there to argue about, right? Doesn't that say a lot about these people? Look at what he did. He did exactly what the world needed. Humbly, nicely. I'm going to do exactly what I know sometimes people want to say, but I'll say it for them and attacking them and call them in exactly what they are. Dumb. You know what I mean? And ignorant. So there we have it. All right, y'all. Peace out. Just trying to bring you out the truth over here, right? And enjoy some of the entertainment too and the intensity and the passion. You know what I mean? Life is great anyways, right? Peace out, y'all.